Go.
Hey, everybody. My name is David, and this is Scott, and we are here presenting from CityDAO. Hey,
Hey everybody, thanks for coming.
we want to first thank so much to Scott and Vridi for putting this amazing event on and for having us here. It's a great honor to be here. So what we'd like to talk about today is CityDAO, give everybody a little overview of what we are and what we do and how we contribute to the Ed3 space and hopefully get everybody interested and welcome you all to CityDAO and to our Discord. So we'll start just by looking at very briefly the City Mirror website. These are all the articles that have been written about CityDAO. A very brief introduction. We started in August of 2021 by buying a piece of land in Wyoming, 40 acres of land. And the question was, can a DAO, which is a LLC, a limited liability company created in Wyoming, can a DAO own land? And can thousands of people collectively govern a piece of land? And the answer was yes. So we own this land, we created NFTs, and from there, I helped write the city charter. I helped to create the original legal guild and the education and research guild. And we created this whole structure trying to recreate the idea of what is a city? What could a city of the future be like where we actually own real land and people someday can come and live there? Now, the land in Wyoming, to be clear, is not a place where people can live. It's zoned for a single family house. It was just a proof of concept to see, can we have NFTs that allow people to govern land? And the answer is yes. So now CityDAO has taken off. We have all these different guilds. We have all of these different projects. I think we have about 20,000 people in our Discord. About 6,000 people are citizens of CityDAO, which you get by going to OpenSea and buying a citizenship. Make sure you go to our Discord and you go to the official links, because as you know, in this space, there are many scams. So don't just go to OpenSea and type in CityDAO. You want to go to our official links. But since then, we have acquired our land. We did it. We created a Parcel Zero NFT for people to govern what we call Parcel Zero. And now we're looking towards many other possibilities of land owning. We've started using quadratic voting. We're talking about using social tokens. And here we are with the Web3 college town. And that's where we wanted to start today, because Scott and I work in the education and research division. So if I can just briefly introduce, I am a lawyer and I'm currently getting a PhD in metaverse studies sociology of the metaverse. Scott is a PhD in economics. And so right now we are focused on research and education. And our big proposal now we wanted to introduce to everybody is called Town. So the idea that we believe in most is collaboration, working together, the idea of synchronous work. Even though we're in Web3, one of the things we all understand in Web3 is that everybody needs to work together. So Town is this idea of selecting a group of DAOs that would come together in a real online space to create a Silicon Valley type feel, something like the UN or NATO of DAOs. So what makes this ideal location? Maybe Scott can speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. So we're super excited about this. And as David mentioned, I think the future of DAOs, they've sort of created online, but we'll move towards actually more being in real life and in real life collaboration. So if we're going to buy sort of physical space, things you'd really look for is room for expansion. I mean, ideally, it's essentially sort of scalable. You can start up with a place where people can show up, work, and then you can expand. And ideally, people can even begin to live there. So we look for a place that has high quality existing structures on it. That's really big. We've looked into all sorts of different sort of parts. We'll get to that in the next slide. Places to sleep, places to stay. Close to an airport's huge. Obviously, if you want people coming together in real life, they have to be able to get there. Web3 tech friendly. I mean, that just kind of goes without saying, but we got to have the best internet possible. And yeah, that's both the big things we really are looking for to build into town.
So I think this goes to our original conception of what is a city. And people have all different ideas. For Scott and I, being in the research division of this, we really think very kind of philosophically, Scott much more on the economic side and me much more on the sociology and law side. And between law, economics, and sociology, we have a very vibrant community in CityDAO considering what is a city? What makes a city? Is it like Balaji's network city where you might have little nodes all over? Is it sort of like Cabin DAO where you'd have people putting pieces of land on chain? Is it something like Sapien DAO, which is creating this constitution of sorts for different DAOs to come together? What makes a city? And we've considered ideas. So one idea we've considered is using a distressed town. So there are towns, cities all around America. And by the way, we intend to begin in America. Obviously, this is meant to be global. And right now we are working very closely with a Chinese community, a Turkish community, a Thai community, a Filipino community, and the French community, and that just happens to be our initial point. We can't start with everything, but we have large communities in CityDAO of those, what I would call neighborhoods. And so we have those neighborhoods. We're working together to figure out if we can do this in America, where in some ways this is the most restrictive legal environment. If we can do it here, then we can translate it out to Portugal and El Salvador, places that are crypto friendly, and then to the rest of the world. So our initial idea when we started all of this was something we called the big parcel, which is we will get together and buy thousands and thousands of acres in some place in America, particularly in a red state, because then we can create like a blue oasis. We can buy thousands of acres in Texas, Wyoming, Ohio, someplace, and but there's problems with that. And the problem is if you buy thousands of acres of land, there's no utilities. It's not developed. There's no gas, there's no electricity, there's no water. You'd have to put in all of these utilities. And also, how do you fund this? You might have to sell tens of thousands of NFTs to people, and that becomes challenging, especially in the bear market. So we've considered now, instead of marketing to tens of thousands of individuals, what if we marketed to DAOs? And the DAOs themselves contain thousands of individuals. It's like marketing to villages. So rather than getting the individuals, we're trying to get the villages to come together and create a city. So one possibility is we go to a nearly bankrupt city in America. We're looking for some in California. Here's a picture of one of them where they already have plenty of infrastructure. They would maybe love to have an organization like. So by the way, this is not meant to be owned by CityDAO. This is just like CityDAO collectively owns one piece of land in Wyoming. This piece of land is meant to be collectively owned by all of these different DAOs together. CityDAO is just trying to spearhead this idea and lead this sort of revolution, but all the DAOs would own it. So another place we've looked at and that Scott can speak to is the idea of actually buying a university campus.
Yeah, and this one is just really close to my heart, and it really foreshadows a bit. We'll talk about in this slide the idea that we're really just going to start an educational platform or a university or some type of school, basically, where people can build tools in Web3. And this is actually really common. There's all sorts of campuses around the United States, and sometimes they're run basically as private businesses, and they go out of business. So one thing I would be really interested in is to buy a campus, and this would really help with our idea of education. And obviously, campuses are usually built, fairly friendly for people to, they're meant for students, so they're quite comfortable, good places to work already. So I think this would be a super interesting one. So we're definitely looking into that.
Sure. And what we intend to have with the land is all of these DAOs that get involved, everybody will have something that might be similar to what we'd call timeshare. Right? So every DAO comes in, they join this, everybody contributes money, together we buy the land, the legal team we'll definitely use outside counsel to make sure we have the best legal advice. And so the legal team I'm a lawyer, but I will help translate all the legalese into basic English. But the idea is we'll either have a nonprofit or a trust or something like that where all of the DAOs will be the boards of directors. Everybody will timeshare this place. And a third option for the place would be something that's more idyllic, something that's more rural in a beautiful setting. Again, the challenge of this is you have a beautiful central location, which we would all timeshare. Let's say 20 DAOs got started, we'd split up the year. Every DAO has whatever it is, 2 weeks, 3 weeks a year for their IRL. But at that time, there's also public spaces that can be used by a variety of DAOs. And that's really this idea of serendipity. And that's something that's so important. And especially, Scott can speak to this from the economics of serendipity. You think of a lot of the open plan offices that are being created by the tech companies in Silicon Valley. They're really trying to create something that originated at MIT accidentally after World War II, which was the serendipity of people who are doing all kinds of different research, just naturally coming together, and the amazing innovations that happen in those kind of locations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is just, so huge. And it's really the bedrock of all this idea. People just imagine, you have sort of IRL get-togethers for Web3. There's all sorts of conferences. But where we're really getting together is to really hone in on that fact that people with similar skills collaborate with each other and start to advance. So you get like a Silicon Valley effect. And it's, it's just remarkable. I described it the other day, we were on a podcast, and it's just like gravity. Cities in some ways are just a pull. It's people with certain skills complement each other. That's where innovation comes from. And you just want to give a physical home to basically let people pull together. And of course, people are doing that online. It's not just in real life, but we just also want to give another layer to that so people can get together, interact. So studies show face-to-face interaction equals more innovation. This is just so true. In some ways, it's interesting because it's kind of a little bit not totally understood. Tons of people have studied this, but we know people getting together, running into each other, exchanging ideas just leads to this huge innovation. So we want to foster DAO collaboration. As we were just mentioning earlier, I really do think the future of Web3 is collaboration. DAOs kind of grown up sort of isolated from each other, but I think in the future, it's going to be about expanding. It's about realizing those mutual goals and helping each other. So physical hubs have innovation and competitive studies. So we just think about these places. Silicon Valley, I mean, to me, that's the biggest model. I've always kind of this idea for a city, we need the Web3, Silicon Valley. There's also Wall Street, Hollywood, all these places you don't really think of, but they're people with complementary skills, sort of being sucked together in the same place, and innovation just comes out. So as Web3 grows and maturities, there's a huge desire for get-togethers. And this is something we've already seen. It's just a huge push for people to get together in real life. I was listening to a podcast with Brian Armstrong. He talked quite a bit about that. He's saying Coinbase, is remote first, and they always will be because there's huge gains being remote first. And that's something we should say. We're not ever trying to get away from that. Most work with Web3 will still be done online, but there's a huge desire to get people together. I mean, there's just certain things you can't communicate till you're sitting down in the same room with each other. And I just think this will be a huge in the next few years, especially post-COVID. So we're really trying to build something that can capture that demand. So we have the opportunity to live in a local economy and bring positive attention to Web3. And this is really something, great too. We're buying a place, but we also want to bring something to the place. We want to add to that community wherever it be. And yeah, in-person experiences help community members bond. I think that's just so true. It's just, we're human. Everyone's online. It's not the same until you're in person. There's just something about meeting someone and interacting with them in person that just builds bonds.
We had thought about this when we were first planning our idea for a Web3 university, and the idea of what would attract people to this. What is, Scott called it gravity, but this attractive force. And so we think about the college town when we think about cities, that you have like the University of Bologna, you have this educational institution, and people just naturally gravitate to it. And then they open up a coffee shop or a bed and breakfast or a dispensary, or they open up a bookstore or whatever a restaurant, just because there's naturally business in this area and people are attracted to it. And as people come to this area, you get these coffee shops, for example, where you're sitting down talking about your project, and at the next table is somebody from Aragon or Bankless or Polygon or Constitution or Krause House, and conversations just naturally start as people were talking about different ideas. one of the things I think we've all seen with Discord is that while Discord is an amazing kind of technology, Zoom is an amazing technology, all of these metaverse platforms are amazing, they don't necessarily allow for the true energetic interaction that happens between humans. And as any teacher in this space knows, you just can't compare teaching online and teaching offline. And there's no real words exactly to explain the energetic interaction that happens when it's not just a teacher in a room talking to students, it's students talking to each other. And it's not just the words that get said, it's the proprioceptive body language. It's the maintenance of social time and duration. It's all of these amazing ideas. So DAOs in a lot of ways are these imagined communities, these invented traditions, these ideas of a nation state. But if we fully go towards Balaji's network state idea, and we have nodes throughout the world, if you have a coffee shop in Istanbul, and then a bookstore in Algeria, and then a restaurant in America, and a WeWork space in France, is that there's that same attractiveness. There's an ideological similarity and draw towards people buying an NFT or getting involved with the Discord community. We hope to create the capital city, not for City DAO, but the capital city for DAOs in general. And so that's the idea. We will have a buy-in for DAOs. Right now, we're looking at $75,000. But obviously, it totally depends on what DAOs want and what their governance is. And right now, we would either offer an NFT or more likely we would fork Compound and whitelist tokens. But there's a lot of ways to do this where different DAOs will come together. They will all have a governance stake, and then together we will buy this land.
Yeah, so here just sort of a quick summary, member benefits. So it's still in the planning stages. We had kind of a rough number of 75,000 to be a full kind of member DAO, but I think we're really going to work on ways that all DAOs could eventually become part of this. So sort of the main things we're sort of selling, you become a member of town, you get exclusive access to the property and all facilities for a certain block of time each year. So David mentioned that kind of a timeshare idea, non-exclusive access to the property and facilities for most of the year, the ability to hold conferences, festivals, and other large group gatherings, which I think is really neat. So there's somebody, obviously, there's huge conferences and festivals sort of going on, but if you have a place that can happen all year round, I just think all sorts of really interesting events would emerge, and especially when you could just do it, it's just sitting there, kind of, you can use it at any time. Anyway, there's all sorts of really interesting in real life events that would come. So you'd get some kind of membership to these festivals, and the big thing being governance, right? So that's what we're going to sell more than anything. David sort of mentioned this won't be owned by City DAO, most likely it'll be like nonprofit or something. So it'll be governed by other DAOs, basically. So, and one thing we really want to do is public goods. There's so much talk about quadratic funding in these elements like this, and I'm really passionate about that. I want this to be a cutting edge experiment in how to fund public goods. Whatever we do, whatever place this looks like, it's going to be rich in public goods. People are really going to be able to get there and jumpstart, a public good. So it's the opportunity for DAOs to be part of the Silicon Valley Web3, which is really exciting to me. I mean, DAOs are sort of growing up and then maturing, and I feel it's another step. Have a physical headquarters, capital city, so to speak.
And I think to build on that, this idea of public goods, when we think of, so this conference is about education. And Scott and I are both educators. So I've been an undergraduate senior lecturer for about 15 years. And I teach business law, I teach management, I teach HR. Now I'm in America, getting a PhD and teaching at a university here on the East Coast. And so for so many years, as an educator, one of the things I've seen is not only is education a public good, it's something that needs to be provided for people. The benefits for City DAO are mostly irrelevant. Our team, just to briefly finish this slide deck, is Scott and me. We have Guggs, who, that's of course not his real name, just like Tassafila is not his real name. They are Hollywood bigwigs who are big producers in Hollywood, and they are the founders of Blockbuster DAO, which has now been rebranded to Rewind. And they all have also, Gugs was with me in the city council way back in November of 2021 and has always been a big part of City DAO. So he also understands DAOs and works closely with this. But just to bring this back to education, and maybe we can just return to the benefits of this. So we think about Balaji's idea of a network city. And from the very beginning, when we were really started talking about why do universities and for me, it's more higher education. I don't think as much about, well, that's just my experience. But why does this need to be disrupted? Well, that we kind of all know. We know that tuitions are much too high, and that students cannot in the foreseeable future be expected to pay $250,000 for a 4-year degree that you then get it and you get a job that pays 40 grand a year. So tuitions are too high. We all know that teachers don't make enough money. You have university professors who are adjuncts and are on welfare or working part-time at Target, you know, and not that there's anything wrong with any sort of job, but we are not paying our educators enough to live in primary, high school or secondary education. We know that there's a bloated administration where there's been a 300% increase in the number of administrators. These problems are transparent. Everybody's aware of them. And then you get that next level of problems where, and I think Scott puts it really well. Scott has your quote about teachers and students and what they should own. And maybe we can jump forward now to City DAO's attempt to try to remedy some of these issues. This is less about the physical space where we would all live and work together, which is the town idea, and more of the university that we believe could be one of the central locations in town, something that really has to do with education and attracts people to this space. So with Balaji's network state idea, we consider something like a network university, where while we think of a city as having decentralized nodes, we think of a university as having decentralized departments. So Journo DAO, which does journalism, and we've worked with them, they could be a journalism department. A DAO like ArchiDAO that does architecture, they could be the architecture department rather than having a traditional university that is all structured around centralized control. And that's one of the big issues with education now is you have this group of people at the top of a university who gets to decide what determines whether someone is educated, what determines whether someone is certified as smart or educated, and that's of course crazy because that's the difference between intellectual and academic. And I think in our world, we believe that everything has gone too much towards academia as a determinative factor in whether or not someone is intellectual. And I think a lot about Antonio Gramsci, who's a great leader in Italy and talked a lot about what it means to be a true new intellectual. And Web3 gives us this opportunity to really have new intellectuals. One thing that intellectuals do is intellectuals write. They think and they write. And so to that end, City DAO has started this initiative, which is led by Scott, into writing. And by the way, this is free. Anybody can sign up for this. And totally meant to be free. City DAO is just trying to encourage intellectual writing and thinking.
Yeah, and this is run by a group called Taptive, and they've done quite a few writers' workshops in the past. So by all means, we can drop the link. Please sign up because I think this is a great way to meet people and a great way to really just start getting your ideas out there. And this really builds to our idea of a university because start writing, you start thinking.
So the way this will work is it's a very simple program. We are going to work with Taptive, and Taptive, I think we have it on the website, has worked with some amazing groups. They've worked with Bankless, 1729. I don't know IndiGG. Do you know some of the other groups they've worked with? They've run 15 writing cohorts. They've published over 650 essays. And the idea here is that it's a blog every week with mutual encouragement. Again, the key word here is collaboration. Everybody wants to be a blogger or make videos or make TikTok or YouTube. Everybody has things to say. And we very much encourage that in Web3. But how do we encourage each other? How do we learn to give each other positive feedback? How do we learn to level up and improve our writing so that all the people who have great ideas and things to say, all the hundreds of people who are at this convention have their own take on things? So we have this cohort where there'll be over 20 pages of resources, guides, frameworks, and it's really meant to support everybody's individual journey. So we at CityDAO really hope that this, just like everything else, can be a public good, that cities themselves are a public good, that we can develop this idea of a community and neighborhoods and people looking out for each other and this collective efficacy that happens in effective communities where everybody's looking out the window to make sure what's going on at the street below and everybody's encouraging each other. And again, we welcome everybody to our Discord. In our, we run the education channel. We like to believe that everybody is looking out the window and seeing what's going on the street and encouraging each other and supporting each other. And to that end, we'd like to sort of close with our final proposal, which is about university. This is our Web3 spelling of university. So this is a CIP, which is a CityDAO improvement proposal. You can find it at the web address forum.citydao.io. We welcome everybody. You do not have to be a citizen to come and like this or read it. If it gets 20 likes, it will go to a vote on CityDAO. So Scott is the one who wrote this and definitely is sort of the architect of this idea.
Yeah, for sure. It's super excited about this. And it's really kind of, it's so central to the conference here, which is all about education. And we fundamentally want to build a new educational platform. David mentioned, but I have this tagline, welcome to university, where teachers own the classes and students own the university. And that's really the big idea. Universities, education is beautiful, it works well, but it's become way too bureaucratic and bloated. To me, Web3 is all about when you find a giant centralized node, you can break that down and allow a path around that. So we just want to reconnect teachers and students. It's really the basic idea. In some ways it's simple and pure, but that's the idea. So build a new educational system that has those tight feedback loops from teachers and students and get rid of all this giant bureaucratic mess that we have. And University by CityDAO, it's kind of clever. I think, I don't know, everyone's respelling it, but because we've actually talked about accreditation and we've kind of realized that accreditation is kind of impossible and not necessarily where we want to go. So we'll say university, but in some ways it's not a university, it's a Web3 university. So the unique spelling actually does mean something. It's our own, it's the new take on what a university will be and should be.
So one of the things we've talked about, and this is the key tagline that Scott just said, teachers own the classes, students own the university. And I think if we could just spend a moment letting everybody know that this is not just a tagline to us. So I've been an educator my whole life, and it's all I ever want to do. Because as an educator, I get to also be a student. Not just a student reading books and trying to write articles and publish, and I love that too, but just a student of humanity. I mean, for me, being a teacher is like perpetually being at a cafe in Paris, drinking coffee and people watching. I get to watch as young people for the last 15 years come and they learn and they ideate and they think of things and they collaborate, and some of them become entrepreneurs and some of them go off to different careers and some of them continue with their studies, and all of them grow and develop and think about things. But the problem is they own none of it. They have no real community feeling. They come to the university and they have some level of commitment or involvement or a belief in education. And some of them are shaped by that and some of them aren't, and then they leave. And it was almost like the university was a station on their journey through life. But there was no sense of true ownership of this, where the 4 years of university is so powerful and so formative. Why can't students have a governance stake in it? And we think they can. And this is done through governance tokens. One of the wonderful things about Web3 and blockchain is the idea that if somebody paid for a class, as Scott said, we use the word university, but we really want to rethink education, intellectualism, academia. They're not the same thing. So if a student pays for a class, what kind of class? Well, the teachers should own their classes. It's the teachers' innovation and planning and curriculum and syllabus and style. And why is it that we have a centralized group of deans or provosts or all of these bureaucrats who decide what classes are taught and they decide what teacher teaches it? Student evaluations mean very, very little. Teaching quality means very, very little at most research institutions in America. What matters is their rank and their publications and their impact factor of the journal that they publish in, and all of these things that are very quantitative, but don't actually matter to somebody who's 18 and wants to learn. So if a teacher could really own their class, the same way an author owns their books, and especially we can see with self-publishing, how much the whole institution of publishing, and especially for universities, peer-reviewed journals, all of that needs to be changed and disrupted. If a student pays for classes especially with something like paying with crypto, and we stake the Ethereum, and then their tuition is reduced over time, why couldn't a student get governance tokens when they pass a class, and then they can help govern this institution? Again, we don't envision a castle-like building with ivy on the walls that's from the 1600s with a bunch of people in this ivory tower. We picture something that is decentralized and modern, something where if a student is 17 and they're leaving high school, and many people want to go on and get an accredited 4-year degree. Right now, you have more and more people, just like people are living the van life or considering being digital nomads. People are considering something like a coding academy, where you go for 3 months, 6 months. You don't get an accredited degree, but you get a very valuable, marketable skill. And you can learn online, you can do it anywhere. Some coding academies, it doesn't cost anything until they help you get a job. That's what we're talking about. Except we're talking about it not just for coding. We're talking about it for sociology, psychology, economics, the liberal arts. Why couldn't someone get a degree in engineering, in music, in whatever, toxicology, in criminology, in anything, theoretically, taught by teachers who own their classes? We won't have probably American accreditation because we don't have $80 million in 10 years to go buy it, but you don't need it, because what people need is to go to school for 6 months or 1 year and then get a job if that's what they want. And all of this would be on NFTs that have the metadata that can show that you've gone to university, the city, university by CityDAO. You've gone to this educational institution for 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, and now you got a job with Facebook, with whatever industry, and you make this certain salary. And over time, it becomes very clear that there's more than one pipeline in America to go from high school to employment. There should not be one pipeline that costs $250,000 and is decided by a bunch of bureaucrats who are invested in their career and not in the education of students. Not to say that bureaucrats aren't interested in students, just to say that there can be more than one pipeline. And I think in Web3, or we believe in Web3, that the education pipelines, there can be a lot of sort of micro pipelines that go into all different directions as opposed to this one big only pipeline. So that's kind of our our take on what CityDAO is working on right now. We have this IRL, in-person, synchronous, serendipitous location, and we have this idea of the university. We have some time to open it up for some questions or anything.
We are actually about 6 minutes over, so
Oh, sorry.
we have
I'm
to
sorry.
close it
I'm
out.
sorry.
But thank you so much. This was super inspiring. The work that you guys are doing is really inventive and very much taking into action what a lot of the ideologies are presenting us with Web3. And I think there are a lot of people that are talking about really great, ideas, but there are very few people that are actually implementing it. Sorry for that. We are actually on a 10-minute break now. Thank you guys so much, Scott and David. This was super inspiring to talk, and we're really excited to, I'm really excited to learn more about all the things that you guys are doing and learn more about how your system is different than the Web2 systems that currently exist. So next up, we're actually having a 10-minute break. And then after that, we have 4 masterminds happening at the same time. All 4 really excellent content. Really excited to attend them. And then we're going to have an unconference. So if you guys haven't signed up for sessions yet, go to the Miro board that's available either in your email or in the platform that says sign up for day 2. And you can sign up for the unconference sessions. Scott and David, thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the i3verse.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.